I was sitting on my porch watching the sunrise over my 30-acre ranch in Dripping Springs, Texas, when I noticed the caravan of white vans pulling up my dirt road. That should have been my first warning that something had gone terribly wrong. But honestly, I figured they were just lost tourists looking for one of the wedding venues that dotted the hill country. I had no idea they were here for my property. My name is Marcus Peterson, and I had owned this land for 8 years. It was not just any property either. This was a working cattle ranch with a main house, 2 barns, stables, and enough pasture to support my small herd of longhorns. The place had been in rough shape when I bought it, but I had poured my savings and sweat into making it beautiful. Every fence post, every repaired board, every planted tree was my doing. I loved this land more than anything. The vans kept coming, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, all pristine white with some rental company logo on the side. They parked in a semicircle near my southern pasture, the one closest to the road. I set down my coffee and stood up, watching as people started piling out. They were carrying tables, chairs, what looked like rolled-up white fabric, and flowers, lots and lots of flowers. I walked down from the porch, my boots crunching on the gravel driveway. A woman in her mid-50s with that distinctive haircut, you know the one, short and spiky with blonde highlights, was directing traffic like she owned the place. She wore white capri pants, a floral blouse, and oversized sunglasses perched on her head. She had a clipboard, naturally, and was barking orders at the younger workers. "Excuse me," I called out as I approached. "Can I help you folks? I think you might have the wrong address." The woman turned to me with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Oh, you must be the caretaker. We are right on schedule. I am Brenda Caldwell, and this is the location for the Henderson Price wedding this Saturday. We are just here to set up." I blinked. "Caretaker? Lady, I am the owner. This is my ranch and there is not any wedding happening here." Her smile froze, then tightened. "That is impossible. I have the permits right here." She flipped through her clipboard with practiced efficiency. "This property at 4782 Ranch Road 12 is designated for community events per HOA regulations. The Sunset Hills Homeowners Association approved this venue rental 3 months ago." My blood went cold. "HOA? What HOA? This property is not part of any homeowners association." Brenda looked at me like I was stupid. "Of course it is. All properties in Sunset Hills fall under our jurisdiction. Now, if you will excuse me, we have a lot of work to do. The wedding is in 3 days, and the bride is very particular." She turned away dismissively and started shouting at a guy struggling with a folding table. I stood there for a moment, genuinely confused. Then the confusion turned to anger. I pulled out my phone and called my real estate attorney, Gerald Hoffman. It went to voicemail. I left a message explaining the situation, trying to keep my voice calm, but probably failing. "Hey, you cannot just ignore me," I said, stepping in front of Brenda. "I do not care what your papers say. This is private property, and you are trespassing." She sighed dramatically, like I was the most tiresome thing she had dealt with all day. "Listen, Mr. Caretaker, or whoever you are. I have dealt with difficult property managers before. The HOA has full authority over community spaces. This land was designated for events after the previous owner failed to pay HOA dues. It was absorbed into the community trust. Now, we have paid good money to rent this space, and we have a legally binding contract." "The previous owner?" I said slowly. "I bought this place from Harold Mitchell 8 years ago. He never mentioned any HOA." "Well, that is not my problem, is it?" Brenda said. "Maybe you should have done your due diligence. Now please step aside. We are on a tight schedule." Behind her, the workers had already started unloading chairs. Someone was hammering stakes into my pasture, right where my cattle usually grazed. I had moved them to the northern section yesterday because the grass was better there, but that was beside the point. They were destroying my property. "Stop," I said loudly. "Everyone stop what you are doing right now." A few of the workers paused and looked at Brenda uncertainly. She waved her hand at them. "Keep going. He has no authority here." I pulled out my phone again and dialed 911. "Yes, I need to report trespassers on my property. They are refusing to leave and are actively damaging my land." That got Brenda's attention. Her face turned an interesting shade of red. "You are calling the police on us? We have permits." "You have papers that mean nothing," I said. "This is my property. I have the deed, the title, everything. You are trespassing. The dispatcher told me an officer would be there within 20 minutes. I thanked her and hung up. Brenda was now on her own phone, speaking rapidly to someone. From what I could hear, she was calling her HOA president. While we waited, I watched the workers with growing frustration. They had set up about 20 chairs before I called, and now they were standing around awkwardly, not sure whether to continue. A younger woman, maybe mid-20s with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, approached me carefully. "Sir, I am really sorry about this," she said quietly. "We are just the event setup crew. The rental company gave us this address and told us to have everything ready by Friday evening. We did not know there was a dispute." I softened a bit. It was not her fault. I understand. But you all need to pack up and leave. There is not going to be any wedding here. She nodded and went back to her co-workers, and they started slowly packing things back into the vans. Brenda saw this and nearly screamed. "What are you doing? I did not tell you to stop." The young woman looked between us. "Madam, if the property owner is saying we cannot be here, we cannot be here. That is company policy. We can come back if you get this sorted out." "It is sorted out," Brenda snapped. "I have the paperwork." A Hayes County Sheriff's deputy pulled up before the argument could escalate further. He was a tall guy, maybe in his 40s, with a weathered face and calm demeanor. His nameplate read Deputy Morrison. "Afternoon," he said, looking between us. "Got a call about a trespassing issue?" "Yes, officer," I said, stepping forward. "I am Marcus Peterson. I own this property. These people showed up and started setting up for a wedding without my permission." "We have permission from the HOA," Brenda interjected. "This property is part of the Sunset Hills Community Trust." Deputy Morrison looked tired, like this was not the first property dispute he had dealt with. "All right, let me see some documentation." "Mr. Peterson, you got your deed?" "It is in the house," I said. "Give me 2 minutes." I jogged back to my house, my heart pounding. This was insane. I grabbed my filing cabinet key and pulled out the folder with all my property documents. Deed, title, survey maps, tax records, everything. I brought it all back down. Deputy Morrison examined the papers carefully. Brenda was showing him her clipboard, pointing at various documents and talking rapidly. He held up a hand to quiet her and kept reading. After what felt like an eternity, he looked up. "Madam, according to these property records, Mr. Peterson is the legal owner of this land. There is no mention of any HOA encumbrance or covenant." "That is impossible," Brenda said. "The HOA has jurisdiction over all properties in this area." "What area exactly?" Deputy Morrison asked. "Sunset Hills, the entire development." "This property is not in Sunset Hills," the deputy said. "According to the survey, this land is outside the development boundaries. It is an independent parcel." I felt a rush of relief. I had known something was wrong, but hearing it confirmed by law enforcement was satisfying. Brenda's face was now bright red. "That cannot be right. Our property assessor said this land was available for community use." "Your property assessor was wrong," Deputy Morrison said firmly. "This is private property, and these folks are trespassing. I am going to have to ask you all to pack up and leave. This is outrageous," Brenda sputtered. "Do you have any idea how much money we have invested in this event? The bride will be devastated." "That is unfortunate, madam, but it does not change the law. You need to leave now, or I will have to cite you for trespassing." The setup crew did not need to be told twice. They started loading everything back into the vans with impressive speed. Brenda stood there, fuming, her hands clenched around her clipboard. She turned to me with pure venom in her eyes. "This is not over," she said. "The HOA will be hearing about this, and we will take appropriate action." "You do that," I said. "And while you are at it, maybe check your property boundaries before you try to take over someone's ranch again." She stormed off to her car, a white Lexus SUV that probably cost more than my truck. She peeled out, spraying gravel everywhere. The vans followed more sedately, and within 15 minutes my property was empty again. Deputy Morrison handed my papers back. "You might want to get a lawyer involved, just in case they try something else. HOAs can be persistent, even when they are wrong." "I have one," I said. "Already left him a message." "Good. Keep records of everything, photos, documents, any communication. If they come back, call us immediately." I thanked him and he left. I walked around the pasture, examining the damage. They had driven stakes into the ground in about a dozen places, and there were tire tracks everywhere. Nothing permanent, but it still made me angry. This was my land. How dare they? My phone rang. It was Gerald Hoffman, my attorney. Marcus, I got your message. What the hell is going on? I explained everything, from the vans showing up to Brenda's claims about the HOA to the deputy confirming my ownership. Gerald listened without interrupting. Okay, he said when I finished. First, you did the right thing calling the police. Second, this is completely bogus. I reviewed all your property documents when you bought the place. There is no HOA covenant, no community trust, nothing. This land has never been part of Sunset Hills. So where is Brenda getting this information? Either she is lying, or someone at her HOA gave her false information. Either way, it is a problem. I am going to draft a cease and desist letter tonight and have it delivered to the HOA office tomorrow. They need to know that any further attempts to use your property will result in legal action. Thanks, Gerald. I really appreciate it. No problem. And Marcus, document everything. Take photos, save any emails or letters they send, keep a log of interactions. If this goes to court, we will need a paper trail. I spent the rest of the day doing exactly that. I photographed the stake holes, the tire tracks, everything. I wrote down everything Brenda had said, as close to word for word as I could remember. I even drove down to the Sunset Hills development entrance to take pictures of the boundaries. Sunset Hills was one of those planned communities that had popped up all over the hill country in the last 15 years. Cookie-cutter houses, manicured lawns, strict rules about everything from fence height to mailbox color. My ranch was about half a mile from their main entrance, separated by a county road and a lot of undeveloped land. There was no way anyone could reasonably think my property was part of their development. That evening, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. Mr. Peterson, a woman's voice, younger than Brenda's, professional, speaking. My name is Jennifer Norton. I am the secretary for the Sunset Hills Homeowners Association. I am calling to discuss the incident that occurred today at your property. You mean when your people trespassed and tried to set up a wedding on my land? There was a pause. There seems to have been a misunderstanding about property boundaries. We would like to meet with you to resolve this amicably. There is nothing to resolve, I said. Your HOA does not have any claim to my property. I expect that to be acknowledged in writing, and I expect an apology. Mr. Peterson, I understand you are upset, but the HOA does have certain rights regarding property usage in this area. Perhaps if we could sit down and review the documentation together. I have reviewed the documentation with my attorney and with law enforcement. My property is not part of your HOA. End of discussion. I see. Well, our president, Mrs. Caldwell, feels very strongly that Mrs. Caldwell is the blonde woman who was here today? Yes, Brenda Caldwell is our HOA president. Of course she was. Mrs. Norton, I do not mean to be rude to you personally, but you need to understand something. That woman showed up on my property without permission, brought a work crew, and started setting up for an event I never authorized. Then when I told her to leave, she refused. That is trespassing. If anyone from your HOA sets foot on my property again without my explicit written permission, I will have them arrested. Is that clear? Another pause. I will relay your message to Mrs. Caldwell. You do that, and you can also let her know that my attorney is sending you a cease and desist letter. Have a good evening. I hung up, my hands shaking slightly. I hated confrontation, but I was not going to let these people walk all over me. The next day was Wednesday. I had work to do around the ranch, so I tried to put the HOA nonsense out of my mind. I was repairing a section of fence in the east pasture when I heard vehicles approaching again. My stomach dropped. 3 cars this time, Brenda's white Lexus, a silver BMW, and a black Mercedes. They parked near my house, and 5 people got out. Brenda, 2 men in business suits, and 2 women in professional attire. They looked like they were heading into a corporate boardroom, not standing in the middle of a cattle ranch. I set down my tools and walked over. Can I help you, Mr. Peterson? Brenda said with that same fake smile. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I did not agree to anything. You are on my property uninvited. Again. One of the men stepped forward. He was in his 60s, silver hair, expensive watch. Mr. Peterson, I am Richard Vance, legal counsel for the Sunset Hills HOA. We are here to discuss a mutually beneficial arrangement. I am not interested in any arrangement. Get off my land. Please just hear us out, Richard said smoothly. We understand there was some confusion yesterday. We would like to make it right. Against my better judgment, I crossed my arms. You have 5 minutes. Brenda looked triumphant. Thank you for being reasonable. Now, as I mentioned yesterday, there has been some confusion about property boundaries. Our records show that this land was supposed to be incorporated into the Sunset Hills Community Trust when the development was planned. Your records are wrong, I said. I have the deed. This property has never been part of your development. Richard held up a hand. We understand that is what your documents say. However, we believe there was an error in the original survey. We have had our own surveyor review the area, and according to his assessment, the boundary line was incorrectly drawn. Your property should have been included in the HOA jurisdiction. I stared at him. You are telling me that you had someone redraw the boundaries to include my land? Not redraw, Richard said carefully. Correct the original error. Show me this survey. He pulled a document from his briefcase and handed it to me. I looked it over. It was complete nonsense. The map showed my property inside some larger boundary that included Sunset Hills, but the scale was all wrong, and the landmarks did not match reality. This is fake, I said flatly. I assure you, it was conducted by a licensed surveyor. Then your surveyor is either incompetent or lying. This does not match any actual property boundaries. I handed the paper back. Your 5 minutes are up. Leave. Brenda's smile vanished. Mr. Peterson, you are being very difficult about this. We are trying to offer you a compromise. If you allow the wedding to proceed this weekend, we will compensate you for the use of your property. I do not want your money. I want you to leave me alone. $5,000, Brenda said. No, $10,000. Not interested. The second man, younger than Richard, spoke up. Mr. Peterson, you should consider the implications of refusing to cooperate with the HOA. We have significant influence in this community. It would be unfortunate if your business relationship suffered. I looked at him carefully. Is that a threat? Not at all, he said quickly. Just a statement of fact. The HOA represents over 300 families. That is a lot of potential customers if you ever decide to expand your ranch operations. It would be a shame to alienate all of them. I do not do business with your community, and I do not plan to start. Now get out. Richard tried a different approach. What if we offered you membership in the HOA? You would have access to all our amenities. The clubhouse, the pool, the tennis courts. I have 30 acres, I interrupted. I do not need your tennis courts. Final warning. Leave now, or I call the sheriff again. Brenda's face was purple now. You are making a huge mistake. The HOA will pursue every legal avenue available. We will tie you up in court for years. You will spend every penny you have fighting us. That sounds like a threat too, I said, pulling out my phone. Deputy Morrison was very helpful yesterday. I bet he would love to hear about this conversation. Richard grabbed Brenda's arm. That is enough. We are leaving. He looked at me. You will be hearing from us, Mr. Peterson. Looking forward to it. They left, but I knew it was not over. I immediately called Gerald and told him what had happened. They are trying to intimidate you, he said. The fake survey, the threats, the bribe attempts, this is actually good for us. How is this good? Because they are building our case. Every time they contact you, they are documenting their harassment. I am going to file for a restraining order against the HOA. They will not be able to come within 500 feet of your property. Can you do that? Absolutely. They have already trespassed twice, made threats, and presented fraudulent documents. A judge will grant the order. Let me get the paperwork started. I felt a bit better after talking to Gerald, but I was still on edge. I spent the rest of the day watching the road, half expecting more cars to show up. They did not. Thursday morning, I got an email. It was from Brenda Caldwell, sent to an address she must have found online. The subject line read, "Final offer." Mr. Peterson, I am writing to make one final attempt at resolving our dispute amicably. The Sunset Hills HOA is prepared to offer you $15,000 for the use of your property this Saturday, plus an additional $5,000 to cover any inconvenience. This is an extremely generous offer, considering the property technically falls under our jurisdiction. If you refuse this offer, the HOA will have no choice but to pursue legal action. We have already consulted with our attorneys, and they are confident that our claim to the property will be upheld in court. This could be a lengthy and expensive process for you. I strongly urge you to reconsider. The wedding guests are expecting a beautiful venue, and the bride has her heart set on this location. As a reasonable person, I hope you will do the right thing and allow this event to proceed. Sincerely, Brenda Caldwell, President, Sunset Hills HOA. I forwarded the email to Gerald with a note. She is still claiming jurisdiction. What do I do? His response came 10 minutes later. Do not respond. I am filing the restraining order today. Also, I want to meet with you tomorrow to go over some additional documents. Can you come to my office at 10 a.m.? I confirmed the meeting and tried to focus on ranch work. I had a dozen projects that needed attention, but I could not concentrate. I kept thinking about the wedding. Some poor couple was expecting to get married on Saturday, and they had no idea their venue was illegal. I almost felt bad for them. Almost. This was not my problem. Brenda and her HOA had created this mess. Friday morning, I drove into Austin for my meeting with Gerald. His office was in a modern building downtown, all glass and steel. I always felt out of place there in my jeans and boots, surrounded by lawyers in expensive suits. Gerald was a good guy, though, mid-50s, balding, with a dry sense of humor and a sharp legal mind. He had handled my ranch purchase and had been my attorney ever since. "Marcus, come in," he said, shaking my hand. "I have some interesting news." We sat down in his conference room and he spread out a collection of documents on the table. "I did some digging into the Sunset Hills HOA and Brenda Caldwell," he said. "Turns out this is not the first time they have had boundary disputes. In the past 3 years, they have been involved in 4 separate lawsuits with neighboring property owners." "What kind of lawsuits?" "Trying to enforce HOA rules on properties that are not actually part of the HOA, demanding dues payments, access rights, that sort of thing. They have lost every single case, so they have a pattern of this behavior." "Exactly. Which strengthens our position significantly. I also found something else interesting." He pushed a document toward me. "This is the original survey map from when Sunset Hills was developed. Notice anything?" I studied the map. The development boundaries were clearly marked, and my property was definitely outside them. There was even a note on the map explicitly excluding my parcel. "It says my land is excluded," I said. "Right. Because when Sunset Hills was being planned, the developer approached Harold Mitchell about buying your ranch to include it in the development. Harold refused. The developer then tried to get the county to force the sale through eminent domain, claiming it was necessary for community access. That failed too. So the development went forward without your land. But why is Brenda claiming otherwise now?" Gerald pulled out another document. "Because about 2 years ago, the HOA hired a new property management company. That company apparently did not review the original boundary documents carefully. They created new maps based on what they thought the boundaries should be, not what they actually are. When Brenda became president last year, she relied on those incorrect maps. So this is all based on incompetence? Mostly, yes. But here is where it gets interesting. I contacted the wedding venue rental that Brenda booked through. Guess what? She told them she was the property owner. She signed a contract representing herself as the legal owner of your ranch." I sat back. "That is fraud." "Yes, it is. The rental company paid her a booking fee of $3,000. She also collected a deposit from the bride and groom for venue usage. Another $2,000. She is profiting off my property?" "Exactly. I spoke with the rental company this morning. They are furious. They are considering their own legal action against Brenda. And the bride's family is threatening to sue for the deposits and the cost of scrambling to find a new venue." I felt a mix of anger and satisfaction. "So what is our next move?" "The restraining order was approved this morning. As of right now, Brenda Caldwell and any representatives of the Sunset HOA are prohibited from coming within 500 feet of your property. If they violate the order, they can be arrested." He slid the order across the table. "This is your copy. Keep it with you." "What about the fraud?" "I have reported it to the Hays County District Attorney's Office. They are reviewing the case. If they decide to prosecute, Brenda could face criminal charges." "Good," I said. I was not a vindictive person, but what Brenda had done was beyond the pale. She had not just made a mistake. She had deliberately tried to steal my property for profit. "There is one more thing," Gerald said. "I want you to be prepared. The wedding is tomorrow. When the guests show up and realize they cannot have their event, There is going to be chaos. You might want to make yourself scarce or at least be ready for some angry people. It is my property. I should not have to hide. I am not saying you should. I am just warning you that emotions will be high. People do not always think rationally when their wedding plans fall apart. I understood what he meant, but I was not going to be driven from my own land. I will be there. If anyone has a problem, they can take it up with Brenda. Saturday morning came too quickly. I was up before dawn, my nerves on edge. I did not know what to expect. Would Brenda really try to hold the wedding despite the restraining order? Would the bride and groom show up demanding answers? Would I have to call the police again? I decided to be proactive. I printed out copies of the restraining order and drove to the end of my driveway, where it met the county road. I put up a sign, "Private property. No trespassing. Anyone entering without permission will be prosecuted." I attached copies of the restraining order to the fence posts. Then I waited. Around 11 a.m. the first car arrived. A white Honda with an older couple inside. They stopped at the end of the driveway, looking confused. The man got out and walked up to my sign. He read it, pulled out his phone, and made a call. After a few minutes of animated conversation, he got back in the car and drove away. More cars started arriving, guests clearly dressed for a wedding. Each one stopped, read the sign, made phone calls, and left. Some looked angry, some looked confused, most just looked disappointed. I felt bad for them, but this was not my fault. Around noon, a limousine pulled up. This had to be the wedding party. The driver got out first, looking at the signs. Then a young woman in a white dress emerged, the bride. She was maybe 25, dark hair, pretty, and she looked absolutely devastated. A man in a suit got out next, older, probably her father. He was red-faced and furious. He marched toward my property, right past the signs. I intercepted him at the fence line. "Sir, this is private property. You cannot come in here." "Where is Brenda Caldwell?" he shouted. "She told us we could have our wedding here." "My daughter's wedding." "Sir, I understand you are upset, but Brenda Caldwell does not own this property. She had no right to rent it to you. This is my land." "This is ridiculous. We paid $5,000. We have 200 guests coming. I am very sorry for what you are going through, but you need to take it up with Mrs. Caldwell. She committed fraud. I am the victim here too." The bride was crying now. Her mother had gotten out of the limo and was trying to comfort her. The father looked like he wanted to punch something. "Do you have any idea what you have done?" he said. "This is my little girl's wedding day. This is supposed to be the happiest day of her life, and you are ruining it." "I am not ruining anything," I said firmly. "Brenda Caldwell lied to you. She does not have any authority over this property. If you want someone to be angry at her. Where is she? I will find her and get our money back. I do not know where she is. But if you do not leave my property right now, I am calling the police." He looked like he wanted to argue more, but his wife called from the limo. "Frank, come on. We need to figure out what to do." Frank gave me one last furious look and stalked back to the limo. They drove away, and I felt terrible. That bride's wedding day was ruined, and there was nothing I could do about it. Over the next hour, more guests arrived. Some got angry, some just left quietly. A few asked if they could use the property anyway, offering to pay me cash. I declined. I did not want any part of this mess. Around 2 p.m., when the wedding was supposed to start, Brenda showed up. She pulled up in her Lexus, followed by 2 other cars. She got out and marched toward my property, ignoring all the signs. I was standing by my gate with my phone in hand, ready to call the police. "Mrs. Caldwell, you are in violation of a restraining order," I called out. "You need to leave immediately." "I am not on your property," she shouted back. "I am on the county road." She was technically right. She was standing just outside my fence line. "What do you want? You have ruined everything. Do you know how many people you have let down today? That bride is in tears. Her family is furious. All because you are being selfish about a piece of land you barely use." "I barely use it? This is a working ranch. I have cattle, horses, crops. Just because it does not look like your manicured suburbs does not mean it is not being used. You could have just let us have one day. One day. But no, you had to be difficult. You lied to those people," I said. "You took their money under false pretenses. You committed fraud. That is on you, not me. I did no such thing. The HOA has every right to use community property. This is not community property." How many times do I have to tell you that? I own this land. I have the deed, the title, the tax records. You have nothing but fake surveys and delusions. Other people were getting out of the cars behind Brenda. I recognized Richard Vance, the HOA attorney, and a few other people who looked like HOA board members. Richard approached cautiously. Mr. Peterson, we are not here to cause trouble. We are just trying to understand how this situation got so out of hand. Ask your client, I said, pointing at Brenda. She is the one who claimed to own my property and rented it out for profit. That is a lie, Brenda screamed. The HOA rented it out. The money went to the— Oh, really? I said. Because I have documentation showing you personally received booking fees and deposits. That is not HOA money. That is personal income from a property you do not own. Brenda went pale. Richard turned to her slowly. Brenda, please tell me that is not true. The money was for the HOA. I was going to deposit it into the HOA account. Was going to, Richard said. Brenda, did you take money for renting this property? It was supposed to be HOA property. The wedding was going to benefit the community. I was just streamlining the process. Richard closed his eyes. You took money for a property the HOA does not own, without board approval, without any legal authority. We do own it, or we should. The survey says the survey is wrong, Richard said, his professional calm cracking. I looked at the actual property records after our meeting Wednesday. This land has never been part of Sunset Hills. Never. And you knew that, did not you? Brenda did not answer. My God, Richard said, you committed fraud. You have exposed the entire HOA to liability. Do you know how many lawsuits we are going to face? The rental company, the bride's family, probably this man too. I was trying to help the community, Brenda said weakly. You were trying to line your pockets, I said, and you did not care whose property rights you violated to do it. A sheriff's cruiser pulled up. Deputy Morrison again. He got out and surveyed the scene. Mr. Peterson, everything okay here? Mrs. Caldwell is violating the restraining order, I said. I am not on his property, Brenda protested. The order says 500 feet, Deputy Morrison said. You are about 50 feet from his fence line. That is a violation. He pulled out his cuffs. Madam, I am going to need you to turn around. You are arresting me. This is insane. Madam, you are in violation of a court order. Turn around, please. Brenda looked at Richard desperately. Do something. Richard stepped back. I am the HOA's attorney, not yours personally. And as of right now, I am advising the board to distance itself from your actions. You are on your own. Deputy Morrison cuffed Brenda and led her to his cruiser. She was crying now, mascara running down her face, making a scene. The other HOA board members were talking among themselves, looking worried. Richard approached me one more time. Mr. Peterson, I want to apologize on behalf of the Sunset Hills HOA. What Brenda did was completely unauthorized and illegal. The board had no knowledge of her actions. That is convenient, I said. It is also true. I am going to recommend the board immediately remove her as president and cooperate fully with any investigation. We will also refund any money she collected and work with the affected parties to make this right. What about the fake survey? The threats? The survey was based on incorrect information. I take responsibility for not verifying it personally. As for the threats, I was not present for those conversations, but I believe you. That behavior is completely unacceptable. I wanted to stay angry, but Richard seemed genuinely upset by what had happened. Fine. I expect a formal apology in writing, acknowledgement that my property has no connection to your HOA, and a promise that no one from your organization will ever set foot on my land again. You will have it by Monday, and again, I am truly sorry. This has been a nightmare for everyone involved. The HOA people left. Deputy Morrison drove away with Brenda in the back of his cruiser, still protesting her innocence. I stood alone on my ranch, exhausted. My phone rang. It was Gerald. I heard Brenda's got arrested, he said. News travels fast, small community. The DA's going to press charges, fraud, trespassing, violating a restraining order. She is looking at serious consequences. Good, I said, and I meant it. The bride's family wants to talk to you. What? Why? They want to apologize. They feel terrible about how the father treated you. They understand now that you are not the villain here. They do not need to apologize to me. I think they want to anyway. Can I give them your number? I sighed. Yeah, okay. The father called that evening. His name was Frank Henderson, and he sounded exhausted. Mr. Peterson, I owe you an apology. I was way out of line this morning. I was just so angry and frustrated, but I should not have taken it out on you. This is not your fault. It is okay, I said. I understand. Your daughter's wedding got ruined. You had every right to be upset. Still, you were just protecting your property. Brenda Caldwell lied to us. She showed us pictures, gave us contracts, took our money. We had no idea it was all fake. I am really sorry your daughter's day got ruined. Actually, it turned out okay. We found a backup venue at a hotel in Austin. It is not what Danielle wanted, but we are making it work. The wedding is happening next Saturday instead. It will be smaller, simpler, but she will still get married. I am glad it worked out. Thank you. And again, I am sorry for yelling at you. After we hung up, I felt a bit better. At least the bride would get her wedding, even if it was not what she had originally planned. The next week was a whirlwind. The local news picked up the story. HOA president arrested for property fraud was the headline in the Austin American-Statesman. They interviewed me, and I explained what had happened. The story went viral on social media, with people sharing their own HOA horror stories. Brenda was formally charged with 3 counts of fraud, trespassing, and violating a restraining order. Her bail was set at $50,000. From what I heard, the HOA refused to post it, so she sat in jail for 3 days before her family bailed her out. The Sunset Hills HOA formally apologized to me in a letter signed by the entire board minus Brenda. They acknowledged that my property had never been part of their jurisdiction and promised never to contact me again. They also refunded all the money Brenda had collected from the wedding rental. The rental company sued Brenda personally for damages. The bride's family did the same. Brenda's attorney tried to argue that she had made an honest mistake, but the evidence was overwhelming. She had knowingly rented property she did not own and pocketed the money. Gerald filed a civil suit on my behalf for harassment, trespassing, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We were seeking damages for the stress and disruption Brenda had caused. Her attorney tried to negotiate a settlement, but I refused. I wanted this to go all the way. The trial happened in October, 5 months after the initial incident. It was a 2-day affair in the Hayes County Courthouse. Brenda showed up looking defeated, her signature blonde highlights grown out, wearing a plain gray suit instead of her usual flashy clothes. The prosecution presented all the evidence. The fake survey, the emails, the witness testimony from Deputy Morrison and the wedding setup crew. They showed how Brenda had collected over $5,000 in rental fees and deposits for property she did not own. They presented evidence that she had known the property was not part of the HOA, but proceeded anyway. Brenda's defense was weak. Her attorney argued that she had genuinely believed the property was part of the HOA based on incorrect maps. But the prosecution showed emails where Brenda had discussed the gray area of the property boundaries with another HOA board member, proving she knew there was a question about jurisdiction but moved forward anyway. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. They found her guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 18 months in prison, suspended to 6 months with the possibility of house arrest, 3 years probation, and restitution to all affected parties. She also had to pay fines totaling $20,000. My civil suit was settled separately. Brenda agreed to pay me $75,000 in damages. Her homeowner's insurance tried to deny the claim, arguing that her actions were criminal and therefore not covered, but eventually they settled to avoid a longer legal battle. I did not need the money, but it was the principle. Brenda had tried to steal my property, and she needed to face real consequences. The Sunset Hills HOA went through a complete reorganization. Richard Vance resigned as their attorney. Several board members stepped down. They hired a new management company and conducted a full audit of all their property records to make sure there were no other boundary disputes lurking. As for me, life went back to normal. I repaired the fence section that had been damaged, filled in the stake holes from the aborted wedding setup, and went back to ranching. My cattle did not care about HOA drama. They just wanted fresh grass and clean water. I did make one change, though. I installed a gate at the end of my driveway with a clear sign. Peterson Ranch, private property, no trespassing. I also put up a few security cameras. I did not expect more trouble, but I wanted to be prepared just in case. The story had more chapter, though, and it came about a year later. I got a wedding invitation in the mail. It was from Danielle Henderson, the bride whose wedding had been disrupted. She was finally having the big reception she had originally wanted, and she was inviting me as a guest of honor. I called her father. "Frank, I appreciate the invitation, but you do not need to do this." "We want to," Frank said. "Danielle wants to thank you personally. If you had not stood your ground, we never would have found out about Brenda's fraud. We could have been scammed even worse. Plus, the wedding we ended up having was actually perfect. Smaller, more intimate. Danielle says it was better than what she had originally planned. I am glad it worked out, but I did not do anything special. I just protected my property. You did more than that. You exposed a criminal who was taking advantage of people. That takes courage. Please come. We would love to have you." I went to the reception. It was at a beautiful venue in the hill country with a view of the sunset over the hills. Danielle and her husband were glowing, surrounded by friends and family. When Danielle saw me, she came over and gave me a huge hug. "Thank you so much," she said. "I know the original wedding day was a disaster, but it led us to something better. And you helped expose someone who was hurting a lot of people. I am just glad you got your happy ending," as I said. "You should dance," she said, pulling me toward the dance floor. "Come on, it is a celebration." I am not much of a dancer, but I obliged. The band was playing, people were laughing, and the whole scene was joyful. It was hard to believe that a year ago this wedding had been at the center of such chaos. As I drove home that night, past the Sunset Hills entrance with its pristine gates and manicured landscaping, I thought about everything that had happened. Property rights matter. Standing up for yourself matters. Not letting bullies push you around matters. My ranch was still there. 30 acres of Texas hill country, mine free and clear, no HOA, no Karen, no drama. Just me, my cattle, and the wide open sky. I pulled into my driveway, past my gate and my signs, and parked in front of my house. The sunset was painting the hills orange and pink. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and sat on my porch, the same spot where I had been sitting when those white vans first showed up. A lot had changed since then, but some things stayed the same. This was my land. I had worked hard for it, and I had fought to keep it. Nobody was going to take it from me, no matter how official their clipboard looked. I raised my beer to the sunset and smiled. Sometimes the good guys really do win. The legal aftermath continued to unfold over the following months. Brenda served her 6 months of house arrest and began her probation period. The last I heard, she had moved out of Sunset Hills entirely, too embarrassed to face her former neighbors. The HOA had to pay substantial settlements to the rental company and had their insurance premiums skyrocket as a result of Brenda's actions. Several news outlets did follow up stories about HOA overreach, using my case as a prime example. I gave a few interviews, always emphasizing the same points. Know your property boundaries, keep your documents organized, and never assume someone else has authority over your land just because they claim to. Gerald became something of a minor celebrity in property law circles. He gave talks at real estate conferences about HOA boundary disputes and how to handle them. He always used my case as his primary example, with my permission, of course. The most satisfying development came about 18 months after the initial incident. The Texas state legislature passed new regulations requiring HOAs to verify property boundaries before taking any enforcement action. It was nicknamed the Peterson Act, informally, though the official name was more bureaucratic. The law required HOAs to provide clear documentation of property inclusion and gave property owners a streamlined process to challenge HOA jurisdiction. A representative from the state legislature actually called to thank me. "Your case highlighted a real problem," she said. "HOAs were getting too aggressive, claiming authority they did not have. This law will protect property owners across Texas." I was proud of that. What had started as a nightmare had actually led to positive change. My ranch continued to thrive. I expanded my herd slightly, added some new fencing, and even built a new barn. Every improvement I made, I did with the satisfaction of knowing it was entirely my decision. No HOA to ask permission from, no design review board to approve my choices, just me and my land. I did have one more interaction with someone from Sunset Hills about 2 years after everything happened. A young couple knocked on my door, nervously asking if I would be willing to sell them some eggs from my chickens. They had just moved into the development and were trying to eat more locally. "We know you probably do not want anything to do with Sunset Hills people," the woman said. "But we heard you might have fresh eggs, and we wanted to ask." I sold them a dozen eggs. We chatted for a bit and they told me about the changes in the HOA since Brenda's departure. New leadership, more transparency, less aggressive enforcement of rules. "It is actually a nice place to live now," the husband said. "The new board is reasonable. They focus on maintaining common areas and organizing community events, not trying to control everyone's lives." "That is how HOAs should work," I said, "when they stay in their lane." They became regular customers for eggs and eventually honey when I started keeping bees. Nice people. It reminded me that most HOA residents were not the problem. It was the power-hungry board members who caused trouble. I never did let anyone use my ranch for a wedding, despite several requests over the years. It was not out of spite. I just valued my privacy and did not want the hassle. My land was for ranching, not events. But I did make one exception. 3 years after the Brenda incident, Deputy Morrison, who had been so helpful during the whole mess, was retiring from the sheriff's department. He had always admired my ranch and mentioned that his daughter was getting married. He asked very politely if she could take some wedding photos on my property. Not the whole wedding, just photos. "She loves longhorns," he said. "She thinks they are majestic. It would make her day to have some pictures with them in the background." I agreed. The photographer came out one afternoon with the bride and groom, and we spent an hour getting shots of them around the ranch. My longhorns cooperated beautifully, posing like they knew they were supposed to be part of something special. The bride sent me a thank you card with one of the photos. It was beautiful. She was in her white dress, her husband in his suit, and behind them were my cattle grazing peacefully, with the hill country sunset as a backdrop. I framed that photo and hung it in my living room. It was a reminder that my ranch could be part of happy memories on my terms. As I write this, sitting on my porch 5 years after Brenda first showed up with her clipboard and her entitlement, I can say that life is good. The ranch is paid off, my herd is healthy, I have no debt, no drama, and no HOA. Sometimes I drive past the Sunset Hills entrance and see people in their identical houses with their identical mailboxes, following their identical rules. I do not judge them. For some people, that structure and conformity is comforting. They like having someone else make decisions about what color to paint their shutters. But that life is not for me. I need space. I need freedom. I need to look out my window and see land that is mine, completely and absolutely, with no asterisks or conditions. Brenda taught me an important lesson, though not the one she intended. She taught me that you have to fight for what is yours. You cannot assume that being in the right will be enough. You have to document everything, get good legal help, and stand your ground even when people try to intimidate you. Property rights are not abstract concepts. They are real and important. They are what allow people like me to live the life we choose, free from the control of people like Brenda who think they know better. My story spread far beyond Texas. I got emails from people across the country dealing with their own HOA nightmares. Some were fighting over fence heights, some over satellite dishes, some over what kind of flowers they could plant. Each story was different, but the theme was the same: HOAs overstepping their authority. I tried to help when I could, offering advice based on my experience. Document everything. Know your property boundaries. Get a good lawyer. Do not be intimidated by official-sounding threats. Most importantly, know your rights. Several people won their cases and sent me updates. A guy in Arizona beat his HOA's attempt to fine him for parking his work truck in his driveway. A woman in Florida successfully fought an HOA trying to force her to remove her vegetable garden. A couple in Colorado prevented their HOA from claiming a portion of their backyard as common space. Each victory felt personal to me. Each person who stood up to HOA overreach was continuing the fight I had started on my ranch that day. I am not anti-HOA, to be clear. I understand they serve a purpose in some communities, but they need to be kept in check. They need clear boundaries, proper oversight, and accountability. Without those things, they become little fiefdoms run by petty tyrants like Brenda. The last I heard about Brenda, she was working at a retail store in San Antonio, far from Sunset Hills. Her marriage had not survived the scandal. Her friends had abandoned her. She had lost almost everything because of her arrogance and greed. I did not take pleasure in her downfall, but I did not feel sorry for her either. She had brought it all on herself. She could have backed down at any point. When Deputy Morrison first told her to leave my property, she could have apologized and worked to fix the wedding situation. Instead, she doubled down, committed more crimes, and made everything worse. Pride really does come before a fall. As for me, I am still here on my ranch, still sitting on my porch watching sunsets, still living exactly the life I want to live. No Karen with a clipboard is ever going to change that. My property records are filed safely in my office. My boundaries are clearly marked. My no trespassing signs are visible from the road. And most importantly, my lawyer is on speed dial. I am Marcus Peterson, and this is my land. Anyone who forgets that will learn the same lesson Brenda did. You cannot take what is not yours, no matter how official you think you are. The ranch is quiet now as I finish writing this. The cattle are settling in for the night. The chickens are roosting. The sun has set behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Tomorrow I will get up and do it all again, working my land, living my life, free from anyone's control but my own, and that right there is the American dream. Not a big house in a planned community, not membership in an exclusive club, just land, freedom, and the right to tell people like Brenda Caldwell to get the hell off your property. That is worth fighting for. That is worth protecting, and I would do it all again in a heartbeat.